Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8 and Third Reich events installed. We are going to continue crushing France, but I wanted to take a quick look here. Okay, we have produced a lot more supplies than we need, so we're going to lower this down. Now, I used to make, in my opinion now, a mistake of got so many supplies, so let's either go to 0 or only produce half of what's needed or something like that. That, especially with the way both Black Ice and Third Reich events work, as well as some of the other submods, is that we use supplies to represent production needs to some degree. So we have an event that gives you a new division or something, and it costs you X number of supplies, and that's just simulate as if you had produced it in the factories all along. So you don't want to be, and some of those events for the different mods definitely have a check to make sure that you're not deficit spending the supplies, and that it is so that you have them. So you won't have the event happen unless you have 10,000 supplies or whatever it is. So you don't want to be dancing on the edge of that, and when you get into the Soviet Union and the problems happening with the invasion there, you will also not want to have a situation where supplies are unreliable. That is just a serious thing that you will want to have supplies continue. Okay, looking at the stuff, I think we will produce some more aircraft. Currently plenty of transports, moderately well in the escorts there. And then you could also do some of these just to keep practicals going. Okay, and also continuing on the theme from the last episode, types of aircraft. Not to get too much into the details of the different versions of, say, the 109, the Emil here, that was what the E was generally called. And there's several sort of different versions within that. Some of the basic philosophy, and I think I don't think I've talked about it in this series. Germany built what they called the Schnell bombers, or fast bombers. Generally, the Dornier DO-17 would be one. I do believe you had also the HE-111, which I'm sort of a fan of, just partially from aesthetics, because it's sort of a nice smooth hull and looks rather efficient. Was looking at, I don't know if these would have come under the Schnell bomber concept. These big old things, but they were thought of, and this was in a pre-radar age, when these terms, in my opinion, are interceptor and fighter are sort of, and well, fighter bomber, that's sort of what it is, but are a bit misleading. A fighter in this term, and before the war, was looked at as a highly maneuverable single-engine aircraft that was meant to control the skies, and generally speaking, really up until the 109 and the Spitfire and Hawker Hurricane, they were twin engine, or they're twin wing biplane type configurations, because about the most maneuverable aircraft is a biplane. Years and years ago, I remember talking to an active duty U.S. helicopter pilot, and this was when the Cold War was still going on, and the basic aircraft that he was flying on was a Cobra gunship, and we were standing there watching a display of aerobatics with a twin-engine fighter, and in a it was, I think, a modern version of one of the biplane, as sort of with the thought of a as a with fighter sort of maneuvers low to the ground, and he thought that and this is back in the late 80s, that this would make the most best fight helicopter killer out there, because they would be so maneuverable. They would fly low to the ground, fly with enough speed that they're going to outfly, at least this version of the biplane, outspeed any of the helicopters, but was just incredibly maneuverable and relatively cheap compared to like an expensive Cobra or later on the Apache. Some more modern guidance systems might be shooting those things down now, but this was sort of back in the day. And so these were highly maneuverable. And what was thought is like, particularly like these, the DO 17, was that they were going to fly faster than the fighters. And if not faster in the absolute sense, meaning if they got going parallel to each other and then had a race that the bomber would outfly the fighter, but in the general sense that if they're flying along, if you're at any sort of 30 miles behind it or something, you're not going to be able to come up and catch it and take it out. And in the pre-radar days, they were doing big things, and you can see about people wearing headphones with these big, huge speaker-looking things, but really they're sound collectors, and they were obviously people with binoculars looking up into the skies for bombers. But obviously, if you've ever, I live in California, in which we can have many, many days of near pure sunshine with just minor spotty clouds that you're never going to hide a formation of bombers moving through. But when I visited England, I can see many days in which, even sunny days or relatively sunny days, there's plenty of clouds to maneuver your bombers through, and you'll never even know that they're up there until they're there, until they're over you or nearly over you. So that the idea that to defend against this, you would have to have your fighters up in the sky patrolling around and catch the bombers as they're going along. But you can only have so many, how long can a fighter stay up there until it runs out of fuel and needs to be resupplied and going in crew rest and all of those kind of things. So it was thought that you were going to have a 20-30% of your fighters up at any one time, and the rest would be scrambling and trying to catch these fast bombers as they were penetrating your airspace and catch up to them. Well, the aircraft that was meant to be that was the Interceptor, and this is why I think that whoever in Paradox misnamed these things. This is the Interceptor. The Germans called it a destroyer, but is the Interceptor. It was a single wing setup, twin engine, fast aircraft that had a relatively good range within fuel tank settings, and would carry a heavy weapons load to be able to come up and fly faster than the Schnell bombers and get to them, any incoming bombers, and shoot them out of the sky. So you needed heavy weapons because bombers were big things, and maneuverability was not very primary on the idea. It was to get there, get your guns on them, and blast them out of the sky, as it were, and so that they were used. And this carries over into the terms, is why it's misnamed, is if you look at particularly the early Cold War, America and the Soviets made a lot of interceptor fighter aircraft type things that were designed not to be good dog fighters, if you will, and this was in the days of early primitive air-to-air missiles, but were meant to be able to take off, launch, and get up to altitude and intercept bombers coming in with carrying nuclear payloads, and so that they didn't again need to be good dogfighters, because bombers weren't going to have very good defenses by that time, and that the range of coming over the Arctic cap from the Soviet Union to the U.S., they weren't going to be able to be fighter escorted either, and they were going to try to use altitude more so than speed to avoid things like that. And so that there was an interceptor. It was a fast. Speed was the key. Enough range was the key, and be able to shoot the bombers out of the sky was the key. And this is, and sometimes people mistake when I talk about interceptors and fighters when I've on the forum, because I'm using real terms and not these misguided use terms here, because this is the fighter. This is a multi-rolled aircraft, and this is an interceptor. So these aircraft were designed by Germany to shoot down bombers coming into Germany or otherwise German airspace, not designed to dogfight enemy fighters. In fact, they would theoretically try to avoid it. By the Battle of Britain, though, they were being used to escort bombers, because Britain was able to put, well, one, the Supermarine Spitfire particularly, but also the Hawker Hurricane, was able to fly fast enough. They were able to get engines powerful enough in a single engine fighter that was still very maneuverable, to get them up into the skies and be a dogfighter as well as an interceptor role. And so the bombers weren't getting to their targets unmolested, or maybe just a squadron or two or whatever, able to intercept a particular big wave of bombers. So they needed to have some sort of escorts, and these were better than nothing. And these had the range where the 109s over London had just like a minute or two or something. Somebody, if they want to look it up, can look it up, of fuel, of air maneuver time, if at sort of full throttle fighter moves levels, until they had to go home. Or if they stuck with the fight any longer, that aircraft wasn't coming home. They might be able to bail out, halfway back to the coast, or bail out over the coast, and maybe the idea that someone could come and pick them up. But if they stayed any little bit too long, they were stuck. They did later develop drop tanks to put on them to extend their range, and that became more and more used by other nations. And drop tanks are particularly good in that, yes, they weigh the aircraft down. The drop tank is just a minor part of the weight. It's mostly the fuel. And by being on there, they increase the drag considerably. But once you use it and you rightly discard it, and then you rightly set them up as a one-mission use. So you get up there, you get over the enemy's target, and you discard the drop tank, so that all that extra weight's gone, and you're stuck with you're up there with a tank with or aircraft with a full tank of fuel to perform much longer. So this was the concept with the 110. And like I was saying, they were using these to escort the bombers in, but they were poor air-to-air fighters, and so they were taking fairly heavy losses with it. Now, the loss totals weren't quite as high as often reported. A lot of pilots reported kills. And if you look at the number of actual planes on the ground, it doesn't match the reported kills. What happened was and I don't think any of the pilots were lying or exaggerating. I'm sure there was somebody who did that, but I don't really think that was the thing. What was going on was that a fighter would come on to the enemy target, engage it, and to the perception of the pilot, hit it with machine gun fire, and sort of pull away from it, and then he would look back, you know, once he's sort of around, and then seeing that plane going down. But in the meantime, or before him, another pilot did another strafing run on the aircraft as well, and so that there were maybe 2 or 3 good passes at that one aircraft before it was obviously apparently plummeting into the ground and nobody else was shooting at it. So, but all 3 of the guys had gotten close enough, had gotten behind it, and had shot at the aircraft, and obviously registered hits on it as they perceived the bullets and whatever, you know, tracer fire hitting the aircraft, and they were probably all right in that they were hitting it, but there's probably a lot more shared kills than a specific kill one, so the numbers were inflated because the Germans, you know, if you look, and particularly at the and not everyone was in Britain, to my knowledge, was going around carefully examining all the wreck sites and tallying them up. But if you look at the German records, internal records of losses on a particular day, and so they know how many aircraft didn't make it home, and how many reported kills that the RAF had that day, they don't match up normally with RAF killing more things. Same thing on the other side. Germans reported shooting down more British aircraft than the British actually lost. I think that very well could be a lot of pilots feigning being hit by plummeting the aircraft towards the ground, and hopefully that wouldn't be followed down, and then, you know, pull out of the dive beforehand, and the German pilot doesn't watch it all the way to the ground because he's worried about being shot at by somebody else or seeking another target of opportunity after he perceives what an aircraft going down, but the aircraft's able to land somewhere in Britain and be able to be repaired, and those types of things as well. So, as well as potentially multiple German aircraft strafing a particular British fighter, and it does crash and burn. And so there was a natural inflation there. I'm not, again, blaming the pilots for overstating it. It's just the way they perceived it in the middle of combat. So when it was pressed into roles it wasn't designed for, the 110 didn't do well. But in my opinion, it was designed for a function that quickly became irrelevant because of radar. You're able to mount fairly decent 20 millimeters in a 109 or FW190 to be able to shoot down bombers, and they're fast enough to come up and catch them, to catch the British and the American bombers. What it did do, though, is that it had fairly good long-range capability. It could carry a fairly good payload, and to use it as sort of its original title would have stated as a destroyer, to go in and do good strikes on enemy air fields that you want to come in and strafe the fields. You want to catch the aircraft on the ground, particularly like on Eastern Front and similar sorts of things. So it continued to be a good workhorse in that sense. It would be also a good converted to a night fighter, because you were able to mount the various types of radars on the nose, because the engines were mounted out on the wings, so that it was able to operate at night very effectively. So it definitely, I think, was worth the trouble of producing the 110 for all of its costs, and that, so it lived up to its capabilities, I think. At least that's my perception. Now let's get back to the fighting here, because and also I want to look at, okay, we are producing a mini traded for, a bunch traded for, and we're doing very well. We don't need that crude. And we don't need this crude. So that should help the money situation considerably. Let's not export this, which will help our supply production needs a little bit as well. Okay, let's get back to crushing the French, British, and the Dutch and the Belgians. Okay, we're going into Den Haag. Rotterdam will fall very shortly. Now we're ready for the siege of Paris, I guess. Oh, good Darian to head it up, so I'm going to get him started. Seems to be the first guy on scene, though sometimes yes and sometimes no if he gets outranked. Well, I'm using the maximum amount of HQs here so that all these generals will get experience for attacking. Don't know why he's having such trouble. He's smashing them, but having more trouble than I think it should be. Let's see, do we have... No, we just move these fighters here. I'm going to put them up as a... Southern interception zone. Well, they're sort of beat up, but I want to get Kesselring there. Okay, Japan, yeah, we'll accept that from you. Glad you asked for it, because if you need... I know I'm just sending them supplies in for now, but... Rotterdam is fully fallen. Now, what's this? Welded plate armor. Okay, and like as you see, each time we've been doing it, it's been increasing the IC cost of various unit types. You might think that's not good, and obviously it isn't. But what it does do is allow us for advanced armor designs, which will be a great improvement. And we can also research more things because we've taken some more leadership heavy provinces, probably Rotterdam and maybe a few others. Let's go for a theoretical jet engine. Notice we already have all this because of earlier events. Okay. And Bank for International Settlement, in my opinion, if you have the supplies, always go for it. The money's nice. Improved relations with Switzerland can be a little nice because it's just a minor thing. But the leadership of 3%, the money bonus of 10%. Yeah, it's supply minus percentage, which is fairly heavy, but the IC bonus of 4% is also very nice, so that's something I always do. And abandon equipment, yes. Okay, very nice event. The British abandoned a lot of equipment at Dunkirk. A lot of it was made, at least thought to be made, inoperable. These look to be burnt because they don't have tires. You don't jack cars up on sand to take the tires off if you're trying to recycle them. Though I don't know if that's a metal or wooden bed, so I don't know. One of those maybe still have their tires on them. I don't know. And you don't roll them into the sand if you're trying to recycle the rubber on the tire. So these have maybe been burned. Maybe not that vehicle there because it still has a window in it. The glass is missing on some of them at least. But even if you burn a tank, depends on how much fuel's in it and shells and other things. If it doesn't get that hot, yeah, you got to replace the seat cushions and things. But they got a lot of Bren gun carriers, some of the other light armored from the British that were abandoned. A bunch of like Bedford trucks that I know weren't burnt. But, they had supposedly fouled the engines up or whatever. Well, the Germans got them running again. I mean, it wasn't like the next day or anything, but there was enough equipment there that the Germans scavenged quite a bit out of the mess left in Dunkirk and surrounding areas as well. So let's see, what did we get? There's a possibility of things in it. You get it once you get here. Oh, good. Okay, so we got some anti-tank guns, anti-aircraft guns, and some light vehicles. It'll be useful as time goes on, though. Nothing war-winning. Don't rely upon that to win your wars, but it doesn't hurt to help with occupation and those. Well, we want Kesselring to get in the fight. Yes, we have multiple Kesselrings, one leading a fighter squadron, another one a ground thing. Unit, not just a thing, but yeah. Okay, I got some more units coming in there. Get Dieppe there. They need to really rest. Let's take a quick look at the victory point. We've got one victory, well, 2 points here for taking this one province. I don't know if I should try even taking the other fortified provinces. That'll be worth 2 once we get it now. Okay, we just got a big, well, various things, but including upgrades done. So let's see. Well, we're almost to the getting the Scharnhorst, but I think we're going to give Herman. Hey Herman, how you doing? I hope you're enjoying this episode. We've got the war going good and full-throated here. Let's see now. That'd be 15 ICs. Now, the next version of TRE that may already be out by the time you're watching this will have an event that gives you just the starting production of the Graf Zeppelin carrier. But we will start this for the fun of it. But also, if you've watched the last series, we did have the carrier come out. Now I'm just not really sure about these. Yeah, I'm going to cancel these for the moment. They do that so that they get deployed with the carrier, and the AI will use them. The AI has a very bad problem with trying to do this as well. We still have a few more points. Bad problem of replacing losses of carrier air groups. And it just does not do with that. I don't think it does it at all. So once carrier loses its air group, even if it has air groups, we'll do that then. Fulfills that need now for more production. We just didn't sort of look at. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, we've got these guys. Oh, they're badly damaged. You need to come back here to get repaired. These guys are doing well. These guys are doing well enough. Very well. Not heavy losses for the British. Or French or whoever. But man, fairly decent. 1, 1, 3, 1, 3, 3. So coming through the Mediterranean here, they're losing some. Got these guys that are somewhat repaired. Convoy raiding, passive. Put them out there. 2, 6, 4. So that's 12 lost in the last week to these guys. And 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. So they're doing well. And these guys are doing okay too. Now we have some Gross Bay. So let's put that out here. I'm going to passive with that too. And Commerce Raider 1, 2, 1. So that's doing okay out there, helping us. Not great, but it's doing okay. Once we can base them out of here, we'll be able to get more opportunities. So Bruges would be the version of it. Wonder if they would have bothered if it was in Bruges. Okay, and we can lower this even more. We have plenty of money coming in. Get Von Mackensen into the battle as well. I just haven't decided about the ocean liners, what I want to do yet, so I'm just leaving it there. Only thing is, it's sort of distracting in that I keep wanting to check to make sure that I've not left a important decision not being made. Okay, I'm going towards that victory point. I've seen them abandon the Maginot Line entirely at times. Not that it serves any point, but just easy picking off of the victory point province. Now, how's my fighter command doing? Well, at least they're engaging the British there, which is good. Okay, now we can start sending whatever armor we have up here down this way. We're keeping it there. The only thing we have left here is the assault on Festung Brussels, or however you want to call it. Fortress Brussels. Papa Hoth is still in command here. But it ain't gonna last. Yeah, huge victory parade. Costs us some money, lose a little bit of supplies, but helps with reorganization rate. Okay, the Ma has gone bye-bye. I believe Japan is now at peace again. See, Japan gets to be at peace. All the world loves Japan. They're at peace with the world now. Okay, we're a little bit negative there. We're gonna let that go. I think there's a historic date for the starting of the trigger for the Nanjing government, which maybe should be reconsidered. In the light that Japan probably would have formed it earlier had they fully taken Japan. And more research even still. Okay, we will be going to the jungles eventually, so let's do that. Nope, now we can still do even more. Not much more at 0.4% there. Yeah, we should be researching as well. Now let's see if we can find some other bombers that are in good shape here. And attack. Let's see if we can put the Condor in there. And we put these guys. So Japan is mobilizing because they had peace. Okay, well, I think we're going to end this episode here. I'll do some management on the production side very soon. So thanks for viewing, thanks for liking the videos. Love to hear your comments either on my comments or gameplay or whatever's going on. Thanks so much.